right on my schedule that I put. So that's fine. Discussion and action regarding the 2014-2015 Neighborhood Commission's work plan draft. So Dave Dearborn, we have a meeting. And
Thank you. The committee of Pete Kolstad, Gary Cunningham, Desiree, myself, Nick, Ernest was there, Matt was tied up. We met since the last meeting, and we put a lot of things on the table that were talked about here, and came up with a rough draft. Does everyone have a copy of the rough draft, the first rough draft? And yes, it has a lot that's omitted from what was talked about. Some of the more important issues that were discussed in our ad hoc meeting were homeless, but the city has been, with other agencies, has been working that heavily, and what we could add with our resources might be quite limited, and it would be a duplication. Prostitution was brought up because it's an issue in District 3 and elsewhere in the city, but a growing issue that's affecting downtown. We were advised that the San Jose PD and other agencies have work in process to deal with that, and that what we could bring to the table might be more an opinion of concern, and if we went beyond that, we might be reaching into something that we don't have the resources to, and it would be duplication. Is that correct?
That's correct. There was another commission, the other commission I staff is looking at human trafficking.
Can you speak more loudly?
Microphone.
It's hard to hear.
The Human Services Commission and their draft work plan that I'm going to be sending to rules later this month is looking at the issue of human trafficking and the prostitution that's involved with that in not just the downtown area but also other districts. And they're also looking at it in the context of human trafficking and prostitution for two events coming up in this area. One is WrestleMania in 2015, and then the Super Bowl in 2016. In the experience of New Jersey and other venues for the Super Bowl, human trafficking has increased the amount of prostitution occurring in cities. And so there's task force and other things. So there's a lot of work that's going to be done in this area. Specifically the human trafficking and prostitution, not prostitution in general.
Thank you. Drones was discussed as it was brought up at the last meeting, but we've since learned that the San Jose Police Department has pulled that from.
As far the folks I was working at with at PD called me last Monday, and said that they shelved it until further review within house. It doesn't look like they're going to be using it. And if you watch the newspapers, or read the newspapers, a couple of days later, they also decided to send back the giant mechanized military vehicle. So,
Yes.
not a drone, they actually had a
Tank.
Yeah, let's call it a tank. Anyway, so that looks like that's going to be a new issue.
Okay. Another subject was disaster preparedness, because of the earthquake in Northern California raised a lot of awareness, and that is something that was on the table that was considered. There were topics from District 6 that were emailed and voiced, and Pete brought up several, Nick brought up several, and we put them all on the list. And near the close of the evening, we said, let's go around the table. First choice, most important choice for each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We went around, tried to bubble up to the top. What out of all that we talked about would be of most concern? However, criteria for that is it had to be a subject that has a direct impact in the interest of most of the districts and most of the 100 or more neighborhoods in San Jose. It can't be on a focus of a district or a few neighborhoods. Secondly, it should be something that doesn't duplicate other people's work. And thirdly, when we put it on the work plan and we process it through to either a motion to council or request of council or information to staff or whatever else, it should be something that is looked upon as something of value that we could do, has some effect and we're proud of. So that's a pretty tall bar to cross because there are a lot of concerns out there that we could all jump on. We all have passion for. So this was the first draft. Question of where do we go from here? First, probably take a look. Did we miss anything? Is there something the group would like to consider? And secondly, how do we go through and bubble up to the top? What of that should go into it? And most importantly, in my personal view from the little experience here, how do we size it to a plate that we can eat? Because in this business, it's quality versus quantity. And in the public eye, quality probably has a much higher concern. When we finish whatever we're going to do, how well we've done it is probably going to speak more than how many things we try to tackle. So with that,
Can I give you a quick update, though, before you get into the discussion? Because one of the items looks like it's already crossed off the list. Under public safety, I think live video is what you're referring to with the cameras. Yeah, and council passed yesterday a motion to actually start putting that into effect on a voluntary basis.
So speaking a little bit, it would still be an item that I'd recommend we keep on the list because it's not actually live video. The use of forensic data from cameras that would take the video live as though they've been recorded. There's many different angles we can use that go beyond the current policy. And also, I think we should comment on the policy because it's in council enacted. I think it's good, but I don't know if everybody shares my opinion. But I think there's a lot of other work that we can do around the area of video. I wouldn't cross that one off the list in any way. I think it's still...
Well, I think what you had mentioned, Commissioner, that you wanted to include in the recommendation of the budget last year was the issue of having cameras used by private folks that could then be utilized by police as needed. And I think that's exactly what council passed yesterday.
It is. It is the recommendation that was supported by many council members, including led by Councilmember Ricardo. But the work that we could do on this issue isn't necessarily limited to just the council of that policy. There's a lot more I think that we could do to talk about flesh out what we might recommend. Okay, but thank you. I am aware. As I was at the meeting prior to that, where there was discussing. It is.
All right, thank you. Ernest distributed a survey. It's two-sided. If you picked up a sheet from the table over there, you may have picked up a one-sided version. I noticed that the two-sided was at the bottom of the pile, and the first few sheets only had one side. And so District 5 United conducted a survey that was available to all San Jose residents regarding topics that came from the prior initial suggested work plan and additional categories that were suggested, and I will just briefly cover this. You can see about 400 and some people responded to each question. You were not required to respond to any question. They were all optional. And what you can see is, and the phrasing was very important. It was, what does the community want the commission to focus on? And you can see that drone technology, we knew it was tabled before the last meeting. The police department had already indicated that. But it doesn't seem to be a priority to the community, focusing on that policy. Second one is community policing. 71% thought that the Neighborhoods Commission should focus on this. Homelessness, this was the winner. 80% of the community, 400 and some people, believe that the commission should focus on this. And We can later talk about how or whether, but definitely they thought it was an important topic. When we talk about the increase in bicycle and pedestrian accidents, about 59% said yes. Street trees policy doesn't seem to be a priority to the majority of the community. And landscaping requirements in regards to drought, about 46% said yes. Here's another big one, blight mitigation. About 80% of the 445 people who responded believe that the commission should focus on it. And lastly,
What is blight?
blight mitigation.
Oh, blight.
Blight
Okay.
is like the photo that was just being passed around.
I thought you said
okay.
blight, I'm sorry.
And the last one was, should we focus on the implementation of medical marijuana regulations? 50% said no, only 38% said yes. This is obviously informational. For me, the value was in the ones that were very one-sided in terms of, yes, we should focus on it. And so I just wanted to make this information available. Again, Ernest distributed it, and I think from my viewpoint, what is not on the current draft work plan that should be is homelessness policy, community policing, blight mitigation, how we focus on that in a way that doesn't duplicate efforts is really why we exist. So I'm certain we can do it if we choose to pursue those.
Okay, just a comment. I think that I'm sure we had access to that particular document, didn't we, Ernest? And that already, yes, I recall we did. And I think your comments are well placed. For blight mitigation, we talked a lot about it. We may be just using different words under code enforcement, neighborhood cleanup, timing methods. We talked about how that's sort of like unsexy, but it's a really important issue. So wording could be changed a little bit in the work plan to be maybe a little bit more than just what we put here. Blight mitigation is a pretty good term, actually, and it would involve these kind of things, I think. So we haven't spent a bunch of time talking about that. I thought that was an important one. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
So I'm a little confused here too then. So under blight mitigation, that would be like the PD abatement and fixing potholes, or?
I think that the commission could define it. What the survey, the examples that the survey provided was trash on the street, illegal dumping, shopping carts in neighborhoods. Those are examples.
And
Probably not choosing cover.
we worded it as neighborhood cleanup, timing, methods, cost, and in the discussion talked about what other types of methods are there for dealing with this in cities like Santa Clara and elsewhere in the country.
So neighborhood cleanup, I mean, that, in our neighborhood, that means you have a dumpster, you can take all the trash out once every 2 years.
Let me interrupt if I might, please. The subject here is not to wordsmith a topic to next year, but to kind of touch on it and highlight it such that it might be a draft, might be something we could put in the work plan. You explained it very well. I think your community did, the community did, we did, we all felt equally. In fact, the picture being passed around
It sounds like they're the same, just different words.
Yes.
Yes. I passed this picture around before our commission here, and this was out there for 2 whole weeks. I don't live in the area, but I go by that area, and people would look and point at me because I do attend their meetings, and they recognize me. And finally I stopped and said, "What's going on here?" Because people were telling, neighbors were telling, that's been out there for 2 weeks. They put it out all on the street. Well, lo and behold, I got a hold of Moses, Commissioner of District 7, who came here, City Hall, Code Enforcement, showed him the pictures. 2 weeks, I told him it's been there. He says, well, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of problems with this house, and the original owner died, then the son took it over and he died, and now it's the sister that's claiming the house. I said, they're in violation. They are in violation. He says, we have cited her already. Well, apparently she'll never pay that citation. Well, 2 days later, after that complaint, cleaned up. Cleaned up. But it took Moses and I to register that complaint at Code Enforcement Department right here on 4th Street. I mean, on 4th floor, right here? Yeah, well, this building. Anyway, it cleaned up. They sent the city out there, they big trucks, and they cleaned it up. 2 days. It was cleaned up.
Okay.
So I didn't mean to monopolize. One of the other things is, as you heard our comments, we're trying to be very careful to only offer things that fit within our purview. Code enforcement being one of them, and I think this is a very, very illustrative example that we're given here that involves prevention, violence, agreement, and blight enforcement, as well as public safety, and I'm sorry, third, this is our charter.
Right.
Transportation. Transportation.
DOT and
So we tried very in budget, of course, and we thought the budget thing was handled pretty well through a different process. So these three are the ones that we really focused on.
Okay. Anybody else want to talk? Any other items that should be on this thing? Is this enough for us to work on?
So have we added the items and now we need to review and determine whether some should come off? Okay, so let me just make sure. So homelessness is on there as for consideration. Homelessness policy.
I don't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I recommended that blight mitigation, community policing, and homelessness policy be added to the work plan.
Under what category? We have a
Oh, okay.
we have
Code
certain areas
enforcement
we have
is blight mitigation, community policing, and homelessness policy or public safety.
Okay, so that was, okay, blight was neighborhood cleanup time at its cost, so that is the blight.
Yeah.
So that one's in there. Under code enforcement.
Code enforcement.
And then you want to add homelessness.
And community policing to public safety.
Homelessness under public safety?
Yes, that is what I'm asking.
Homelessness is under...
I'd offer it might be under a different category, but
Oh.
I wouldn't argue the merits of homeless, or attention to homelessness, which probably should be under
We've got like
safety.
4 slots. So we need to
Larry, if I might, regarding homelessness, that was a very passionate topic that people feel very strongly about. It's in the paper every day, we see it every day, and a young child is returned from a homeless camp recently. And there's a lot of pressure to move people around in homelessness. It's just a sad condition. I wonder, and I've asked this as a question, how many of the people responding are not fully familiar or informed with what the county, the city, and nonprofits are doing at this time, and responding to what they see and read about. And can we bring anything, even if we bring all we can to it, do we change what's already in the process now? We don't have very many resources.
I would think if I could respond to that, that the items that we add to our work plan, we previously discussed the types of actions we could take. At times there may be a subcommittee, ad hoc committee. At times there may be a simple letter, or perhaps just support for what the city is doing at the time. And we don't have to decide today what we will do or how much we will do. I think we just have to decide, is it important? Is it something we should look at? However we look at it. And having said that, I am interested in ensuring that some sort of policy comes about, whether it's minimal effort on our part or more effort on our part, because those of us, almost all of us who have lived here for decades, know that this situation didn't exist, and it doesn't have to exist. We don't have to be like those cities.
So, I was just going to say, what is it that we can do? We can try to advise and give input to the council, and we can disseminate information out to the community, but we do not physically go out and...
Right, I think at this point what I'm asking is that we add it to the work plan, and that we decide our actions and commitment at a later time, because that's all we're doing on all of these. I mean, we could ask that of any topic.
I just want to comment on that. The housing department is doing quite a bit with the issue of homelessness, whether it's the large camp that is always in the press, or the issue of feeding the homeless out in St. James Park, or whether or not in District 2 the homeless encampment sometimes start fires. I mean, these things are all part and parcel of what PD looks at, certainly what housing's looking at. The housing department also has what they call a housing advisory committee, which is similar to the commission. So one of the things that you can certainly add it on there. What I can do to clarify it is to find out, before you go into an area that isn't neighborhood specific, exactly what the Housing Advisory Committee and Housing Department is doing, and what PD is doing regarding the housing crisis, so to speak. That isn't, as was brought up earlier, that doesn't count what the County Human Relations Commission is doing, and what the county has a homeless coordinator. So there's a wide variety of different things that are occurring right now. Certainly you can add it to the work plan, results you want from it, and also how it adds value to everything else the city is doing. I'm not saying you shouldn't have it there, but let me do some research to find out what niche you...
Categorization, we could probably put that in. I would hate to see it not there.
Well, I think that the police department, city council have come up with a solution to this problem. But they have to, put their heads together on something like this. This is not new. People like to go out and have fun. But it's going to be done at somebody else's expense.
So I'm just trying to understand what it is that we can do. And I see us writing a formal letter to council